welcome to our panel. Welcome to our panel, Step by Step, Turning Your Presentation into a Publication. We're so glad that you could join us. A quick note that this session is being recorded and shared on our website to those who registered. Many of us get started sharing our work with colleagues via conference presentations. Despite the fear of public speaking, conferences are a manageable way to spread the word about projects and initiatives that we've had success with, but the sharing doesn't need to stop there. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by a group of colleagues who've generously agreed to share their insights on how they took something that they presented and transformed it into a publication. Our hope is that you leave today feeling not only inspired, but also better equipped to take the next step, whether that's outlining a new article, submitting a manuscript, or simply making time to turn your last presentation into an article. Thank you for being here, and let's dive in. So joining us today from the Library Writing Cooperative are myself, I'm Holly Jackson, Amanda Eisenstark, Anna Sandelli, and Tammy Ivins. Amanda, if you will flip for me. There we go. The Library Writing Cooperative is a group of librarians working together to help other library workers share their work and ideas with the community through supportive and non-judgmental feedback. Our initiatives include the First Draft Matchmaker program, which offers opportunities to both serve as a volunteer peer reviewer and to also have writing reviewed, a monthly writing time series during the academic year, an annual panel event that you're currently attending in June, and National Article Writing Month, NaRIMO, in July. You can visit our website to learn more and to connect with us. I am thrilled to introduce our panelist for today. First up, we have Melissa Chomintra. She is an assistant professor in the Libraries and School of Information Studies at Purdue University. We have Stephanie Johnson, a reference and instruction librarian at National University. Mark Lenker, an associate professor and teaching and learning librarian at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and Dr. Michele Villagran, an associate professor at the School of Information from San Jose State University. And on our next slide, you'll see a link, and I believe we'll put that in the chat for you too. If you want to learn more about our panelists and view their full bios, we encourage you to check out that link and learn more about them. They are all really excellent folks. All right, if you we'll stick around. We'll got questions, and if you want to ask questions at any point, please type them in the chat. Anna is going to collect them. We will address those at the end as we have time. So our first question is, can you briefly describe a conference presentation or proposal that you developed and the publication that ultimately resulted from it? Melissa, we're going to start with you.
Sure. One of I think I'll talk about my favorite time that this happened. It was actually when I was still at Tulane University when Holly and I were working together. I was working with a faculty member in the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies program. And we had worked together at this point for a number of years, specifically with her identity, difference, and social inequality course. And the main project in that course is like a scaffolded series of assignments centered on engaging students in the feminist praxis of research, writing, and citation. And part of my role, being sort of like an embedded librarian in that course, I hosted 2 workshops on interrogating normative constructions of academic authority and cultivating like feminist research practices and feminist citational practices. So this work actually resulted in myself and the faculty member teaching a workshop together at the 2023 National Women's Studies Annual Conference. That was titled Information Literacy and Research as Feminist Praxis in the Undergraduate Classroom. So after that conference, I started to ideate on, how I could turn this into a paper. And so I successfully turned that into a solo authored article titled Bell Hooks, Feminist Pedagogy in the Library Classroom, which was published in Feminist Pedagogy, which is an open access journal out of Cal Poly. So that's what time that I turned a presentation into an article.
I love that. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, next up, we'll chat with Stephanie.
Hi. So, Mine was a little different. There was this, it was at National, and there was this program that was already in place. It's incredible. That was created by a friend of ours, one of our colleagues, Amanda Bizet, and it's called the Dissertation Toolbox, and it takes the doctoral dissertation process, the research process of it, and breaks it down into like bite-sized pieces so everybody can people can have a better grasp of the different parts. Anyway, Tammy and I actually did a presentation at OLC on this entire project, and we had such a good time with it. It's something that we both taught. We were really involved in sort of updating and the process of kind of improving everything related to this toolbox. So one day we were kind of looking through, calls for proposals, and we saw one for an ALA book, and we were like, "Hey, this actually fits pretty well with what we're looking at." And National is mostly online, and so the book that we'll be publishing our chapter in is specifically about helping online learners and doctoral level learners. So um, it was it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be because we had the presentation, right? The presentation sort of acted as our outline, which was really phenomenal. So I think that's about it.
Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. Next up, we have Mark.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks to the Library Writing Cooperative for the chance to be on this panel. Um, I want to talk about my paper in Communications and Information Literacy. It was a perspectives paper called Dwindling Trust in Experts, a Starting Point for Information Literacy. That was published in the December issue of Communications of Information Literacy in 2023. But it started in the summer of 2022 when I had a sense of deep dread about trying to teach information literacy in a time when people didn't trust experts the way they used to. So, as I was looking at uh, various versions of the project, I saw that there was one from August of 2022 that was like a 13-page essay called A Sad and Wiser Information Literacy. See, deep dread. It's deep over here. Um, but I ended up presenting that at the Nevada Library Association annual conference. Um, it was called Teaching Information Literacy in Untrusting Times. Little toned it down a bit still, the trust issues there. Um, I also presented it at LOEX, and in between proposing for LOEX and actually doing the presentation, I pitched it at Communications and Information Literacy as a perspectives piece. And there, the uh, editor for perspectives, Andrea Baer, really helped me refine it. And that was reflected both in the final piece and in the presentation at LOEX. So lots of good help along the way.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
And Dr. Michele Villagran.
Thank you, Holly. And thank you to the Library Writing Cooperative. So I'm going to go way back. This is starting 8 years ago, and this really proves when you find a great collaborator and a topic that you both are vested in and really interested in. It can lead to not just from one presentation to one publication, but can lead to now I think we're on our third publication, and we've already presented like 3 or 4 times on it. So back in, oh my goodness, I think it was October 2018 when I first met Lisa Martin. She is at UC San Diego in their library. I believe she's the assistant program director for the student learning experience. We first became acquainted. There was a call for a program collaboration for Special Libraries Association for their 2019 conference around speaking about emotional intelligence. I had done previous work in consulting with law enforcement agencies on emotional intelligence and even libraries on EI strategies. And Lisa, she was formerly at, I believe, the University of Houston. She had worked with her former institution on EI and done some research with her institution. So it was a natural fit. We had not met, so this is all via email. We worked on a proposal, submitted it. In June 2019, we presented Building the Emotionally Intelligent Workplace, Ways to Improve the Self, Others, and Overall. And then from there, it was great. I made a new friend, a new collaborator. We loved talking about this topic. So in December 2019, so same year, I saw a call for papers around the topic of joy. Because Lisa and we had been talking about emotional intelligence, but also about happiness in the workplace. And we're like, well, are folks happy? Like, do we know what's research out there? So I thought it was really a unique call for papers. It was not specific to library information science, but it was around joy, and then we could pull in EI. Well, we did not submit to that journal. However, in spring 2020, we decided to undergo research together. So we had a whole mixed methods research study for academic librarians related to emotional intelligence and happiness in the academic library workplace. So we're undergoing research. At the same time, we decide, let's work on a publication once we analyze the results and all that, but also, why don't we go submit it to other conferences? So we presented in 2021 at Calm around boost your middle manager knowledge, need to knows about employee emotional intelligence and happiness. And we pulled data from our results because we also not just looked at employees, but we looked at managers and even middle management. And then we presented at ACRL also in 2021, really focusing on making a difference in how EI and happiness help with organizational excellence. So our first publication came out in 2022 in the Journal of Academic Librarianship, and it's called Academic Librarians, Their Understanding and Use of Emotional Intelligence and Happiness. Now, this all led, and really, I think coming from Calm, the feedback we got related to kind of middle management and that kind of sweet space, because typically it's looking at employees or looking at, higher admin. We received feedback, and so we decided, well, why don't we then take our data and pull out the subset related to kind of the middle management piece and what administrators are looking at, which resulted in a 2024 publication, also in the Journal of Academic Librarianship, on emotional intelligence and happiness, varied perspectives of supervisors and employees. Now, we weren't done yet. We just submitted a third publication, actually replicating our initial study because, a little thing called COVID happened. So we have replicated our initial study and analyzed the data and did some analysis looking at the prior data we received. And that is currently under review. So it just proves if you have a topic, find a great collaborator. One small little presentation that turned into now 3 publications and 2 more presentations and probably more.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. Some great answers. So our next question is, did you initially intend for this presentation to become a publication? And if not, what prompted the decision to pursue publication later? Was it the feedback, professional requirements, collaboration opportunities? I know some of you have touched a little bit on this, but we'll just kind of dive a little bit deeper into it becoming a publication. And we'll start with Melissa.
Well, it was so great to hear about everybody's work. I feel like my article TBR has just gotten longer. And Mark, I will say that I will be citing you in a keynote I'm giving tomorrow. That paper you're just talking about, actually. So I'll let you know how it goes. So yeah, okay. Um, Yes, I did intend for this presentation to become a publication. I largely because of my institution's rigorous tenure requirements. So it's every idea I have has to be a publication. But I think obviously I just loved that the topic and the work that we did together, and I wanted to share it with as many people as possible. I did receive a lot of good feedback on the presentation from the conference attendees. That made me realize it would benefit other folks in the profession looking for guidance on how to incorporate feminist pedagogy into their library instruction and information literacy. Um, there's not a whole lot published on like specifically feminist information literacy. There's a good solid there's a solid foundation, and there are obviously other folks that publish in that space, but um, keeping that sort of conversation going is exciting for me, and I hope to publish more along the same lines in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, Stephanie, I'll turn it over to you.
So I wish I could be like Melissa and say, yes, there was this plan. There was so not a plan. We didn't have a plan. What happened was Tammy and I co-wrote a couple of chapters together for a book a little bit earlier. And the way we wrote together was just really complementary. The way that like what she took on versus what I took on and how we edited and just the communication was really great. So when I saw the opportunity for this other book chapter, I was like, ooh, let's try this. Let's do this too. Why not? Right? Because I'll be real honest with you. I was super nervous about the authoring process in and of itself. Even going through those first two chapters, I was still like, that imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, of like, but when are they going to figure out? I don't know what I'm talking about, right? So having someone like Tammy, who was an accomplished writer, an author already, to partner with, and then having partnered with her and having it gone so well, just really kind of made me feel a little more confident in saying, hey, maybe we should try this as well. Um, I will say our feedback that we got at OLC from people was they wanted to know more about our dissertation toolbox. And so that did sort of feed into the idea like, oh, well, this could be another way that we could get more information out about it. And the truth is I don't want to hide this amazing thing that we're doing, right? I want to share it with as many people as we can. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Mark, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Um, this started with me just trying to figure out what was going on with me and why I was less optimistic about work. And even for a less personal topic, if I'm presenting something, I'm going to write a lot about it at first. It's just the way I figure things out. So this started with just some reflections. The reflections started to look like an essay. Uh, I thought about making an essay for the journal Library Trends because there are some authors that I admire who've done lots of more conceptual things there. Um, but then I saw the notice about um, communications and information literacy and their perspectives column, and I thought, oh, that's going to be a really good fit. But all along, I think I was looking at the presentations as a chance to share, like you were saying, Stephanie, because it's good to share your thoughts, but also to help me refine my thinking for a better article down the road.
I love that, the idea of refining for something better later. I think presentations, I always think of them as a way to kind of test out ideas and
Hmm.
see where they go. So I love that. And Michelle, turn it over to you next.
So back in 2018, 2019, no, like that was not on my radar at all. It's like, oh, this is cool, right? I'm going to present and oh, it's great. Let's just go, I saw that call for papers for about joy. Um, but I know Lisa, I believe at the time was on a tenure or promotion track. And so for her, it'd be great for her career. And also I was I was at San Jose, I started in 2018, and I was really learning, like, transitioning more from the practitioner to the tenure track of faculty and how you have to do research and present and publish and has to be in these, higher tier journals, and what is scholarly versus like more practitioner oriented. So I was kind of in that transitioning space, and I quickly learned, because now I will tell you, probably as of 2020, so it took me at least a 2-year learning curve to learn the ropes of what it's like on the tenure track line. I'm tenure now, but Now I will not present unless I can turn it into a published work. That's like one of my rules. And even vice versa. If I present on something, I will then turn it into a published piece. But back in 2019, unfortunately, I was not like Melissa. I just know it was just, oh, I want to keep working with Lisa, a great person I met. I really loved talking with her about the topic. Like we both had this interest and we both wanted to do some research. So I think it was more the collaboration and working with her versus actually, no, this will then become a publication. Well, now it's become, three, and we're talking about what's our next project together. So it was more so that. And the other thing too, and this is just when you get to that point, considering who's going to be first author and how that's going to look. So strategically, we were very strategic. Her and I, we switched authorship. Our first publication, I was first author, and the second one, she was first author. And then our third publication, actually, we pulled in a student as well, my research assistant. And then, oh, actually, we're on our fourth publication, so I can't keep up. But we really try to balance and dependent upon who needs it more. And also, we split everything. We're very like collaborative, 50-50 on the works. So I wanted to mention that.
I love that. I've done quite a bit with the library writing cooperative folks, Anna and Amanda and Tammy and Anne previously, and we like to alternate names as well on our presentations and who's taking turns with that. So that's great. So our third question deals with the process of actually turning your work into a publication. So what did the process of turning your presentation into a written publication look like? And what aspects translated easily? What required the most rethinking or additional work? Melissa, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, okay. This is a really good question. It like made me like reflect clearly on my own process, or I was like, wait, do I have a process? Um, so I think for me, one of the things that came to mind was like sort of changing the voice, right? So like writing for the reader rather than like the listener, which does kind of require a fundamental shift in like pacing and tone and that sort of thing. But I do think um, your presentation like materials are really helpful when you go to sit down and start to think about it. Like, your presentation slides, for me, they often really help me outline a paper, right? And like, you've done a good chunk of work already if you've done put together a PowerPoint presentation, or even a poster, right? So I think using presentation slides to expand on the ideas, um, and then thinking about how to anchor like those like conversational points that you have in presentations um, to the broader academic or professional discourse, right? Obviously through like citations and references and sort of like attaching those things to the scholarly conversation. And then I've also thought about some slides that I have used in my presentations have like translated really well into like a figure or a table for an article. So again, I think like trying not to totally reinvent the wheel, right? When you're transitioning into writing an article, but just kind of like thinking about it as like expanding that, right? And I think like that helps me feel a little less like overwhelmed, thinking about and using the work that I've already done. So I think that's typically my process
I love
when I
that.
do that. Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned posters because I always, in my mind, presentations are like, oh yeah, I'm in front of people. But like the posters are great too. And if you follow a more traditional formatting of the poster, it also
Right.
flows
Yeah.
really well. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm so glad
Totally.
you mentioned
Totally.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Stephanie, turn it over to you.
So Melissa stole my answer. I just want to put that out there. I was really impressed with my idea about an outline. So just so you guys know that. No, but in all I mean, in all seriousness, I think that is one of the best things that you can do is consider your presentation as your outline. That was something that Tammy and I talked about, and she was the one who told me, and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? So for those of you hearing it for the first time, here's your second time. It really does make sense. Also, I think like your speaker notes can really come in handy as well. So, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'll put like a little joke in there, a little something that kind of like to sort of bring in the audience. Well, that can still be used, like even in an academic setting, like you can use those little things that make it personal. Um, for us, I think one of the nicest things is because ours is on a program, we have a ton of like documentation of our program, right? So that makes it really nice for us because we can just go back and kind of pull descriptions of courses, descriptions of sessions, things like that, main points, et cetera. I think I would agree that the additional work is probably going to be more on the whole like writing for the reader. I think, Melissa, that was a really, really good point. Because especially if you're someone like myself, like I like to write like I talk, I like to, sort of chit chat with my reader, and that's not always appropriate, obviously, depending on the publication that you're going to be publishing with. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Um, but yeah, she stole my answers. I don't know what else to say. She got it all. She nailed it.
I love when we're all on the same wavelength. This is great. Mark.
Oh, this is a good question. Um, I had one answer thought out, but then Melissa said something that made me think about something else. So, um, as someone who typically starts with writing, and I'll often be dealing with kind of more about the questions than about having the answers, and kind of wallowing in the questions, and that can lead to sentences that are 4 lines long, which is maybe okay in a written work, but if I'm presenting that, especially someone like me, how am I going to focus that in a way that normal people can relate to? So I love being able to present what I'm writing on because it forces me to focus it. And then uh, I think the result is just better communication in the written product. Because, like you were saying, Stephanie, my writing is best when it sounds like somebody talking, you know? So after, you know, 4 or 5 rounds of expanding and contracting for the presentation and expanding again as you're writing and then contracting again, you end up saying pretty much what you really want to say. And so it's good to go through multiple rounds and presenting just really helps with the writing, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you. Michelle.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. You all stole lots of things I was going to say. Borrowed. We share. I guess I think for us, and this was so long ago, so I was like really trying to reflect back, and I don't remember the true process back then. Now, though, I can tell you, anytime I take a presentation and turn to written publication, I utilize my speaker notes. I'm very detailed with my talking points in my notes. So from there, I literally have a full outline. I just copy them out, and then it's just structuring it, and of course writing it into prose and adding all the references and whatever data I have, etc. So I don't remember the process, but to be honest, it takes a lot of organization. I mean, I'm fortunate because Lisa is a great collaborator and we are pretty structured together and even our voices go well together. Like it's even hard for me to distinguish once we read the whole piece when it's done, like which is her voice and which is my voice, which is pretty unique because usually you can tell. But I would say like we use Google Docs and Google folders. So we are very structured with our foldering from the beginning, determining the tools we needed and what resources to use. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But also, we meet weekly, or we did when we were writing, up to publications. So we set up a meeting cadence, and it was working time. It was time like we would just work, 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 and we all had assignments. So like I would work on this piece, she would work on this piece. And we kept each other accountable. There were a lot of times where it was like, oh, I suck today, or I couldn't get that far, or oh, life happens, right? Moments happen where Lisa changed institutions. We both had the promotion 10-year piece. Children are born, babies are born. So breaks happen, but we didn't like kill ourselves over that because life happens. It's like, okay, so then what's the time frame to come back to it? And we will come back to it. But I do want to talk about the rethinking because I think there were three specific moments I remember. One, the qualitative coding tools we were going to use. We initially started with NVivo first because my institution has access, her former institution had access, but then she switched institutions and things changed and access wise. So then we used Deduce because it's open, and but then we had issues with Deduce and then we had to pay, and I don't remember all the drama. But then we ended up using Taget. But this was in the first, I think the first article, the first one we had a lot of issues because of all these transitions. So that was a specific moment where we had to rethink like what's the best tool moving forward. So now we actually are using Taget. We've used that in the last two publications. Also support needs. I'm fortunate at San Jose State to have opportunities to apply for support, whether it's you need a statistician to help you with your quantitative, you need a research assistant to help like with manuscript preparation, look at citations. I have to apply every semester. I always apply for what I need. And her and I talk about that, like what do we need to move our publication forward? So any supports you could find. The Library Writing Cooperative is a great resource. And I'll talk about that in our next question, but I would definitely look at their resources because it's a great opportunity to really improve your publication before you submit it, also to have the space and time together in community to research and write, and also to help another fellow colleague and review their work. And the last thing I'll say is that the rethinking happened with our last publication. We thought it was one type of study. Lo and behold, in fact, it was not. It was a whole different type of study. So we had to do a lot of research around that and really be explicit in our article as to this is not a longitudinal study because there's a lot of reasons behind that. But that was one like we had to really rethink and think about.
Thank you. A lot of really great stuff there. I just have to say, those of you that work off of speaker notes, like, God bless. I have to wing it for everything. It does not matter how many notes I put down on a piece of paper. I cannot follow them for the life of me. And so those of you who are organized enough that you really have your life together for speaker notes, like you get 5 gold stars from me because that's incredible.
Holly,
So,
can I jump in?
oh
Because
yeah, please.
just to riff off that, I write meticulous speaker notes and then I ignore them.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, but I do need to rehearse it in my brain thoroughly, and then I can just go.
It's like training wheels,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Because I do it too. I like will write word for word and like I think it's like some of it's like imposter syndrome, some of it's like I just don't feel like a natural academic, right? So I'm like, I need these notes.
Right.
You know?
I'm glad that we all do the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel much better. So we touched on a bit, I think, in your presentation, this next question, but what strategies, tools, or workflows helped you move from presentation to publication? So several of you mentioned outlining being very important, selecting venues, collaborating with co-authors. So this is a great time to, feel free to add anything else that you think is worth noting here. And Melissa, this might be a surprise, but we're going to kick it off with you.
I'm honored. Okay, so this kind of like piggybacks off of what I was just saying. Like I don't feel like writing does not come naturally to me. It was so like I had so much discomfort like when it started to become a very big part of my job and I was like, can I actually do this? Why did I choose a tenure position? That's like seems silly if I hate this, right? But it really forced me to like really stretch my limits. Again, lots of discomfort. But like developing like a writing practice was really helpful for me. Like if I like, and I still very much do this, like I always outline first and then I'll go back in and start filling it in, right? Whether it's with like citations or bullet points or like extra things that like I think about. So I'll do an initial outline and then I'll revisit it and add more and then kind of building it from there helps me because I can see the structure and sometimes it helps me to like have like a chunk to work on. Like if I'm going to focus on the introduction, I'm like, okay, here's this little chunk and I can just focus on this like and not think about all of the other things. I also do this silly thing in which I like will set word count goals for myself. And that makes it feel less overwhelming and uncomfortable. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write 500 words today, right? Because it's like, the typical article is, a couple thousand or whatever. So I feel like I'm like, oh, well, like if I write 500 words a day for like 2 weeks, I'll have an article in 2 weeks. Well, that's nothing, right? It's not, doesn't like actually always work that way, right? Because life happens, as folks have mentioned. So, but it helps me like put it into focus and like break it apart in a way that like makes it less intimidating for me. I also think a lot about journal selection because again, that will influence how you write the article, right? A lot of journals want different things, their formats are different. So I think knowing like where you intend to place it makes it a lot easier on the back end so you're not if you write something and then you submit it and they're like, well, you have to change these things because this is how we format things or we want things this way or so it can save you a lot of time, I guess. And then yeah, like when I collaborate I think it's helpful to set up like writing time together, where you're either like on Zoom and you're writing together virtually if you're collaborating with somebody far away, or if you can get in the same room together. I think that's always helpful too. Makes it less lonely.
I love that. Great points. Thanks, Melissa. Stephanie.
So I'm still a scaredy cat and I don't want to write by myself right now. So for me, collaborating with people is a big thing. Some of that I think is just like feeling a little nervous and finding my own voice in our field, right? And what does that sound like and where do I fit into everything? So for me, collaborating is a huge, huge part of the authorship portion of my world right now. Um, we talked about outlining. I will be honest with you. One thing I have to do is I have to block off the time on my calendar. So if I don't block off the time, it's not happening. If you're not on my calendar, I'm not meeting with you. It's just the way things are and the way our world is, and it's everything's pressing so often. So I think finding the time that you set aside and you just claim it and don't let yourself go, well, I'm just supposed to be writing. I could do this other thing at the same time. Like, don't do it. Like if you set it aside, that is what the time is for. And having the boundaries too with your work. So we're really lucky that our bosses give us time to do some writing on the clock, which I think is, I know it's not always something that's, smiled upon in places, especially if you're not tenure track. So we're pretty lucky in that we're not tenure track, but they still provide the time for us, which is pretty awesome. So make use of that. And I would say too, talking to other people about what we're doing can be really helpful as well. Because sometimes I find like I wish I was a good thinker like Mark and I could just like think it all out on paper, but I can't. In case you couldn't tell, I'm much more of a in person, tell me what you think about this. And so for me, having those conversations is really, really helpful as well. And also kind of helps getting like other people's like, does this sound right? Like I say that a lot. Does that sound right? Does that sound right? And sometimes even saying that just in conversation about what you're going to be writing about is nice because it helps you sort of fine tune maybe the way you were going with an argument or with a discussion. So that's me.
I love that. I'm super guilty about putting it on my calendar and then letting other people take that time. I'm super guilty about that. So yes, stick to your boundaries on that one. But Mark.
Um, Melissa and Stephanie took all of mine, but as they were talking, they reminded me of some books that have helped me, so maybe I'll talk about books. And I put off the idea of reading books about writing because who wants to do that, right? That does not sound super appealing. But then I thought, well, I read books about library work. At least I can, read books about writing. And a lot of them are really, really good. So the one that I started with, I forget the author's name. He's a psychologist. It's called How to Write a Lot. Talked about a lot of the strategies that Stephanie was talking about in terms of blocking time. Um, but what was also really useful about that book was all the citations. Um, there's one that I haven't gotten to yet, but it's by this author with the intriguing last name of Swords, like, and it's called Stylish Academic Writing. How can I not have read that yet? But I really want to. That's on my list for sure. Um, but one that I did spend a lot of time with that I think is appropriate for this is called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. And I think it's appropriate for this because one of his most important messages is that writing really should sound like speech. And academic authors can be really bad about turning verbs into nouns and just making it all weird. Uh, and after a while, it gets hard not to make it weird. But reading someone like William Zinsser's On Writing Well can help you relax it out a little bit more and write like a human. So yeah, I'd say that On Writing Well, stylish academic writing, and um, How to Write a Lot be some good starting points.
Great recommendations. Thanks, Mark.
Sure.
And Michelle.
I'm not gonna, my talking points don't help because everybody said everything already, except for library writing cooperative. I'm gonna put out another, no, they did not tell me to say any of this. This is my own experience. Um, I think Lisa and I have utilized the submit your draft and get, reviewer feedback, I think twice. And then I also used for another article. And it's really great because we got such great feedback every time from the reviewer. It made our article even easier that we made edits, then we submitted, and we had like minor revisions from reviewer one, reviewer two from the Journal of Academic Librarianship both times. So definitely utilize that resource. And then the dedicated space or time. I'm in a bunch of groups. I even have meetings with myself. I know I see myself on the screen and I'm there just researching and writing and check in and say hi to myself. Um, but to Mark's point, and I love Mark that you brought up books, and I had to go find this. I wrote a blog post, it's a little dated, back in 2018. I'll put it in the chat about resources for planning, research, and writing. And there's several books on there, and the How to Write a Lot is Sylvia. I don't know his first name, maybe Paul, I'm not sure. But there's other resources on there. But one thing I do want to mention is I think when it comes to whether it's presenting and then you turn to publication or publication and you present about it, you have to tie it to your mission. What is your mission statement? Do you have one for your career? What is your career trajectory? So like there's a lot of opportunities that come up. Is it feasible with your schedule, the timing, the resources you have? Does it fit though with your ultimate mission and your career trajectory and where you want to be in your position? And we haven't talked about that yet, but I think it's so critical because there might be another opportunity later. So keep that in mind and develop a mission statement. And my last resource for you, I don't know if anybody knows Kathy Mazak from Scholar's Voice. She has a great podcast, and it's free. And there's a lot in a blog. There's tons of resources on there, and you can listen to her podcast, all different topics, all about research and writing. It's primarily for non-binary and women, but there's so many resources there you might want to check out. And through hers, I mean, she's really helped me to like set up tools and structure and even planning your like after post tenure, if you're tenured, what to do then, like what's the next step. So I'll put those two resources in the chat for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. These are all great. And your check's in the mail, Michelle. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We really did not ask her to pay. We did not ask her to say nice things about us, but we do deeply appreciate that. So, all right. Our final question for today is based on your experience, what are one or two pieces of advice that you would offer to librarians who are considering turning a presentation into a publication for the first time? And, this could be for folks who maybe have been doing this for a little bit, or maybe folks who are just totally new to this and are really just dipping their toes into publication. And Melissa, we'll start with you.
What? No way. Okay, yeah, this was also one that I noodled on for a bit too, and tried to like think about all the ways that like I get support. I think for me, mentorship is a big deal. So I rely a lot on my mentors when I like want to have a conversation about like an idea that I'm like just starting like to think about whether something is like possible or is this stupid or like how would I if I want to do like a specific type of study that maybe I haven't done before if I can meet with a mentor who has and kind of have them help walk me through it. That's been really helpful. So I rely heavily on mentors. So definitely get one if you don't have one. I've I think like even non-writing things, I think it's just so nice to have a mentor. Mark was actually one of my first mentors when I was in library school a million years ago. So yeah, shout out to Mark again. Um, and I will also say writing groups. We have a couple different writing groups in my department. One is sort of set up for just time to write, be in the same room, write. Um, Again, like it's on your calendar, it's like blocked out time, that's helpful. And then we also have what's called like a discussion and feedback group where you bring a piece, everybody reviews it, and then they give you feedback. So it's nice to do that before like sending it out to a journal so you can kind of get like pre-reviewer feedback. And that's been extremely helpful for me. So I think like those are the two things that I rely on the most. I think largely, yeah, I'll leave some extra answers for other people. So, but yeah, I think those two. Because yeah, it's like hard to, write in a silo or ideate in a silo and like, not chat and bounce ideas off of other people, even if you're not collaborating, right? So yeah, talk to people.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thanks, Melissa.
Mhm.
Stephanie.
I would say don't be scared, like me, right? Don't be a scaredy cat. We can all do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. I'll put it that way. Um, I would also say that, oh, I had this great idea. I was going to share it, and now it's gone. I'm so sorry, you guys. I had this thing, and felt really big. So don't be scared. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Read call for proposals. Read them. They come out all the time. You just never know when something you're like, ooh, this is kind of up my alley, or ooh, this is something I've really been thinking about lately, or, read them. I guarantee you, most of us kind of scan them real fast and then just kind of throw them out. When you come to the point that you really want to start writing, start reading those calls. And also, to add on to that, make sure that the place that you're looking to publish is a place that you want to be associated with as well, right? So somebody might be writing on the topic, but it may not be like up your alley. So just be careful with some of that as well. I think, and then I'll leave the rest for Mark and Dr. Michele.
Perfect. Mark.
So here's a suggestion that's a little different. Um, yeah, several of us have been on the tenure track, and peer-reviewed journal articles really help with that. But many of the journals have opportunities to write things that are not peer-reviewed. And so if you're feeling like publishing about your presentation is like fitting a square peg into a round hole, a lot of times those non-peer reviewed opportunities have some more flexibility, so you can just say what you have to say. Um, so my piece that I was talking about was a perspectives piece for communications and information literacy. Instead of being peer reviewed, I worked with an editor on that, and it was a really good experience. They also, in communications and information literacy, have an innovative practices feature. So that's a possibility as well. Um, I review for the journal portal, Libraries in the Academy, and there are three there. One called Worth Noting about kind of new developments in the field, one called Global Perspectives, and one that's edited by this guy named Mark Lenker. I don't know, he's some sort of weird chump, but I tell you, I'm an easy sell. So if you want to try an idea that you think might fit in Portal, please send it my way. Um, and from my end, getting to know an author and actually working with them is way more fun than the double-blind peer review process. It takes some work, but um, I really enjoy it. So I guess my advice is to consider um, non-peer reviewed opportunities because they might fit your presentation better and they do get a lot of visibility, right? Citations, downloads, because you can do something that's really interesting and maybe not necessarily super academic sounding, people will gravitate toward it. So consider that as a possibility as well. Oh, college and research libraries news would be another venue kind of along those lines that might be a good fit for your presentation.
Perfect. And Mark, what is the name of the section you edit?
Reports from the field.
Reports
The
from the field.
portal.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And Michele.
So I'm trying to think here because everyone, this is what happens when you go last and you have a last name that's at the end of the alphabet. Thank you, my husband. So I think thinking. So there's so much advice I think I've already given. But I would say number one would really be you have to be strategic. I'm always like, be strategic. So that means so many things. Like, you know who you are, how you operate, your style, your preferences. If you don't want to use a certain tool, don't use it. Like, use what works for you. And so if you're thinking about turning a presentation to publication, what do you need in order to get it to publication? Do you need those writing groups where you're in community with folks and you can bounce ideas? Do you need, solo time? Do you need mentorship? What do you need? Maybe you don't know what you need. This is where you go and ask a mentor what are potential and resources. But I think you know yourself the best. So utilize where your strengths are and then figure out those gaps of things that you might need to fill in. And I think the second thing too is when you're looking where to publish, whether it's practitioner oriented, scholarly oriented publication, always have a backup. I failed, I think, my very first publication many, many years ago. Yes, I looked at the scope. I thought it fit. I'm like, let me submit it. They rejected it right off the bat because they said there are other journals, but they actually gave me a list of other journals, which was nice, where it would be a better fit. So always have, don't just choose one and target one. Don't just go with one call, have other backups, plans. And often some publications, journals might have like an ongoing or open call, maybe not a specific call. So there's that opportunity there. And I love, Mark, your point too about looking at, I call them like kind of the practitioner in between spaces. Doesn't need to be peer reviewed. It could be a blog post. It could be a more about like what's going on in the field. Those are great spaces and places to get your voice out there and people to read it. And then the other thing is thinking about style. We haven't talked about like style guides, but you're going to submit it one place and maybe it's APA, but then, oops, they don't want it. They reject it or whatnot. Oh, I'm going to go over here in Chicago. Then you have to redo it. So be strategic is my second piece with that and looking at where you're going to publish. And don't throw away anything. Like every time you present it, every presentation can be turned into some type of publication, no matter how small, how big, whatever. Get your voice out there. So don't throw away any of the content you've already done. You can repurpose it. You can update it. Maybe it's something from 10 years ago. You can update it and then go and publish it. So I wouldn't throw away anything you've done because it's still of value. And we want to hear what you have to say and share with the world.
I love that. And I think that's so true. I mean, some of the things I'm currently working on are going back to when I first got started, back, 10 plus years ago now. And it's just like, there's this cycle of information. And I know this has been mentioned by a couple of folks here today about how something comes out. It might be time to, redo a survey, to re-examine the issue, to see how things are current. It was mentioned post-COVID, how things have been affected post-COVID. There's a lot of different options. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's time to relook at things that have been examined and see how they fit in the current perspective of things. So as we, at this time, feel free, we don't really have a ton of time for questions, but I will shamelessly plug National Article Writing Month, which is coming up next month. So now that you've had some, good advice from our presenters, from our panelists, if you're feeling inspired to turn a presentation into a publication, this is a great chance to do that. We spend July working on our writing. It can be an article, a book chapter, whatever makes sense. We have weekly Zoom sessions that you are welcome to join us in. We have optional accountability partners. There's a chance to earn a champion sticker. They glow in the dark. They're pretty cool. So once you submit your writing, you can do that. There's no deadline to claim your sticker. Whenever you submit that, you can get that in. And so at this point, we just want to thank you for spending this time with us this past hour. Thank you so much to our panelists for your honesty, your encouragement, the practical wisdom that you've shared today. Whether you're just starting to write or are deep into a long-term project, we hope you found validation and useful takeaways in this conversation. Writing is rarely easy, but it's a journey we don't have to take alone. And today's dialogue, I think, is a really great example of that. And any of us, I think, would be happy to have you reach out if you have questions, you want to talk more about any of these issues. We invite you to stay connected, keep writing, and continue supporting each other's work. Again, shameless plug for National Article Writing Month if you want to take advantage of that service. And please look for follow-up resources. Don't hesitate to reach out if you want to be involved in future writing events or panels. And until next time, take care. Thank you so much. And we do have a link for survey for session feedback at the end. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you all so much. This has been great.